My sister always had a flair for drama, but nothing prepared me for the day she decided to burn my entire life to the ground with a single lie. One accusation, one I never saw coming, was enough to turn my family against me, wreck my job, and leave me sleeping in my car. I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but rock bottom kept digging. Everyone believed her, and every attempt I made to defend myself only made me look guiltier. For months, I stewed in silence, waiting for my chance. And when I finally uncovered the truth, her motives, her secret dealings, her smug confidence that she'd won, I built a plan so cold and so perfect it would leave her reputation in ashes. The sister who tried to ruin me would soon discover what it feels like to lose everything. Before everything went to hell, I had a good life. Not perfect, no one's life ever really is, but it was stable, and stability was something I valued more than anything. I'm the kind of person who thrives on routines. Same morning coffee, same podcast on the way to work, same little Sunday grocery run where I'd stock up for the week and feel smug about meal prepping. I liked order, predictability, the comfort of knowing where I stood in life. We weren't the picture-perfect sitcom clan, but we weren't a train wreck either. My parents were middle-class, hard-working people who always drilled into us the importance of appearances. My dad was one of those men who thought a pressed shirt and punctuality could solve most of life's problems, while my mom had this passive-aggressive streak of making everything nice on the surface even when things were boiling underneath. We didn't air dirty laundry. We smiled, we posed for pictures, we pretended. Then there was my sister, Emily. 2 years younger than me, but if you asked her, she'd tell you she'd been running the show since the day she was born. And honestly? In a way, she had. Emily had this magnetism. She could walk into a room and within 5 minutes, she'd have everyone's attention. Teachers adored her. Classmates wanted to be around her. She was clever, sharp, funny when she wanted to be, and utterly ruthless when she didn't get her way. I, on the other hand, was the quieter one. Not shy exactly, but more reserved. I'd rather read a book or play a game than go stir up drama. I think that's why our parents often compared us without even realizing it. Why can't you be more like your sister? Wasn't always said aloud, but I heard it in their tone. Emily got away with everything. If she skipped a chore, it was because she was busy with something important. If I forgot to take the trash out, I was irresponsible. She was the golden child, and I was dependable. The fallback. The one who could be relied on but never praised for it. It didn't bother me much growing up. Or maybe I just convinced myself it didn't. I told myself I didn't need the spotlight. Let Emily be the star. I'd build my own quiet life, one that was steady and safe. By the time I was in my late 20s, I had what most people would consider a solid setup. I had a decent job in accounting, nothing glamorous, but steady. I had my own apartment, a small circle of friends, and a routine that kept me grounded. I wasn't rolling in money, but I wasn't drowning either. I took pride in being the reliable one, the one who showed up, the one people could count on. Meanwhile, Emily bounced around. She'd start one project, abandon it halfway, then chase the next shiny thing. College major after major. Job after job. Relationships that flared up dramatically and then crashed just as quickly. And yet, somehow, she always landed on her feet. People forgave her. They bought into the charm, the tears, the excuses. And my parents? They ate it up. If Emily needed help with rent, they'd bail her out. If she flamed out of a job, they'd say she just hadn't found her true calling yet. If I ever stumbled? The silence was deafening. Here's the thing I didn't realize back then, my whole identity was tied to being the good one. The reliable one. The one who never rocked the boat. I thought that made me strong. In reality, it made me fragile. Because all it would take to shatter that identity was someone convincing the world I wasn't who I said I was. Someone like my sister. But at that point, I still trusted her. Sure, we had sibling rivalry, but nothing that crossed into betrayal. I'd still pick up her calls late at night when she needed to vent. I'd lend her money when she swore she'd pay me back. Spoiler, she never did. I'd even cover for her with our parents when she screwed something up. Part of me thought, stupidly, that she'd do the same for me if I ever needed it. I didn't know it yet, but the same sister I protected was about to destroy my life with a single accusation. And once it started, there would be no putting the pieces back together. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always my catch-up days at work, the kind where I could sink into spreadsheets, tune out the world, and not think about much else. My phone buzzed during lunch, and when I saw it was Emily calling, I almost didn't answer. She had a habit of dumping her chaos on me at the most inconvenient times. But something in me thought, what if it's serious? So I picked up. Her voice was shaky, teary, performative. She launched into a story so wild, so out of left field, I thought at first she must be exaggerating or mixing me up with someone else. She said I had done something to her, something serious, unforgivable. I won't spell it out here just yet, but the kind of accusation that instantly flips the power dynamic in a family. The kind that makes people stop what they're doing and listen. At first, I laughed. Not out of cruelty, but out of sheer disbelief. "Emily, what are you even talking about?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She doubled down. Cried harder. Told me she couldn't stay silent anymore. My stomach dropped. I could hear the resolve in her voice, the same manipulative edge I'd heard 100 times when she wanted something. Only this time, it wasn't about money, or attention, or some minor lie. This time, she was rewriting reality. By the time I hung up, I was in shock. I kept telling myself, she won't actually tell anyone. She's just mad. She'll calm down tomorrow. But by that evening, the phone calls started. First my mom. Then my dad. Both sounding icy and rehearsed, like they'd already had a long conversation with Emily and decided which side they were on. My mom's exact words, "We're so disappointed in you." That sentence hit me harder than anything. They didn't ask questions. They didn't want my side. They just believed her. Instantly. The next day, it spread further. A cousin messaged me on Facebook asking if it was true. A friend from high school texted me, "Dude, what's going on with your sister?" The story was growing legs, mutating with every retelling. People didn't care about evidence or logic, they cared about the drama. And Emily was serving it up hot. At work, things got worse. I didn't even know she had contacted my boss until he called me in and said there were serious concerns about my character. He was polite but stiff, using the kind of HR-friendly language that basically meant, "We don't want a lawsuit, but you're done here." Within a week, I was suspended pending investigation. And everyone knows what that means. Suspended is just the polite prelude to fired. I felt like I was drowning. No matter what I said, it sounded defensive. Guilty. "Why would your sister lie?" people asked. That question haunted me. Why would she lie? What possible reason could she have for detonating my entire life? I didn't have an answer then. All I had was the crushing weight of betrayal pressing down on me while the world pulled away. The worst part? A tiny, poisonous thought crept in at night when I couldn't sleep. Maybe I really am the fool they think I am. Maybe I should have seen this coming. But I didn't. Because I trusted her. And now, that trust had cost me everything. If the accusation was the spark, the fallout was the wildfire. It spread fast, uncontrollable, and left nothing untouched. The suspension at work turned into termination within days. I got the official HR email, all sterile wording about maintaining a safe and respectful environment and the need to move forward without distraction. No one asked me for proof, no one wanted details. They just wanted me gone before anyone else started asking questions. I was escorted out of the building by security like I was some kind of criminal. My coworkers, people I had eaten lunch with for years, wouldn't even look at me. Rent became the next problem. Without a paycheck, the clock started ticking loud in my head. I had some savings, but not much. I'd always been careful, but careful doesn't stretch very far when you're suddenly unemployed with no safety net. I reached out to my parents, desperate not for money but for reassurance, for them to say, "We believe you. We'll help you figure this out." Instead, my mom's voice was flat, cold. "We can't enable you anymore." That word, enable, cut deeper than anything. As if I was some addict or manipulator, not their son who had never once given them reason to doubt him. Friends fell off next. At first, they sent cautious texts, "Hey, I heard something. Is everything okay?" But after I denied it, after I insisted it wasn't true, the silence grew. No one wanted to be associated with me. No one wanted to risk being seen defending someone accused of what Emily said I had done. People don't care about truth when reputation is on the line, they care about not getting burned themselves. Within a month, I couldn't pay rent. The landlord was polite but firm when he handed me the notice. I packed my life into boxes I couldn't even store anywhere and shoved them into the trunk of my car. That's where I started sleeping, curled up in the backseat of a beat-up Honda, the smell of fast food wrappers and old coffee seeping into everything. Nights were the worst. Cold, lonely, the kind of silence where every regret echoes twice as loud. Meanwhile, Emily thrived. Photos of her smiling, out at brunch, drinking cocktails, posting inspirational quotes about strength and truth filled her social media. People showered her with sympathy, called her brave for speaking up. She soaked it in, the way she always had, living off attention like it was oxygen. And I sat there in parking lots, staring at my cracked windshield, wondering how the hell my own sister had managed to paint me as a monster while she wore the halo. Every time I tried to fight back, it made things worse. I drafted long, desperate posts defending myself, but stopped short of posting them because I knew how it would look. Guilty people always shout the loudest. I tried reaching out to cousins, to old friends, to anyone who might listen. Most ignored me. A few responded with pity, which somehow felt even worse. I thought about confronting Emily directly, but I knew she'd twist it into more fuel. She'd probably record me, edit it, post it, spin it. She always knew how to weaponize perception. And I was finally realizing that in a world where perception is everything, truth doesn't stand a chance if no one wants to hear it. That was the first time in my life I truly understood what it meant to be powerless. To know that the story being told about you wasn't just false, but lethal, and yet, you had no way to stop it. But even as I sank lower, something inside me hardened. I didn't know it then, not fully, but a seed had been planted. A single thought I clung to on those nights in the car when I couldn't sleep: one day, she'll slip. One day, the truth will crawl out of the hole she buried it in. And when it does, I'll be ready. There's a particular kind of humiliation that comes with sleeping in your own car. It's not just the physical discomfort, the stiff neck, the cramp in your lower back, the way condensation fogs the windows and makes you feel like you're suffocating. It's the feeling of being visible, exposed, like the whole world can see how far you've fallen. Every time headlights passed or someone walked by, I'd shrink lower, pretending I was just resting, not living there. The first few nights, I parked in quiet neighborhoods, thinking it would be safer. But the stares from dog walkers in the morning, the way curtains would twitch as people peeked out, quickly made me paranoid. Eventually, I learned the routine: supermarket parking lots, 24-hour gyms, even behind a Walmart where other people in my position parked their cars in a silent, unspoken community. Misery loves company, but there was no comfort in it, just a grim acknowledgement that we were all ghosts haunting the edges of real life. Hygiene became its own battlefield. I signed up for a cheap gym membership just to use the showers, trying not to notice the looks from people who could tell I wasn't there to work out. I kept spare clothes folded in the trunk, obsessively rotating them to avoid looking as disheveled as I felt. But no matter how hard I tried, the shame clung to me. I smelled like car seats and desperation. I avoided mirrors because I hated what I saw: hollowed eyes, shoulders that slumped with defeat. Food was worse. At first, I bought fast food because it was cheap and easy, but even that added up. Eventually, I switched to crackers, peanut butter, whatever I could get from dollar stores. Sometimes I skipped meals altogether, telling myself I wasn't hungry when really, I just couldn't afford the reminder of how low I'd sunk. And all the while, Emily's life glowed brighter. She posted pictures with friends, wine glasses clinking, captions about how healing isn't linear and truth always wins. She was basking in the role she'd scripted for herself: the survivor, the strong one, the sister who'd bravely stood up against me. People loved her for it. Every like, every comment of support felt like another knife twisting in me. I kept thinking, does she ever think of me? Does she ever feel guilty? But deep down, I already knew the answer. Emily had always been able to rewrite her own story, to believe her own lies if it meant she came out on top. Guilt was for people who cared about the wreckage they left behind. She didn't. The nights stretched into weeks, and every morning I woke up a little more bitter, a little more hollow. Yet somewhere inside that bitterness, something started to change. Survival forced me to adapt, and adaptation forced me to harden. At first, all I wanted was for people to believe me again, for someone to give me the benefit of the doubt. But as the weeks passed, I stopped craving validation and started craving something else: payback. I didn't have a plan yet. Hell, I didn't even have stability. But lying there in the backseat of my car, staring at the ceiling through tears I refused to let fall, one thought began to root itself deep inside me: if I ever get the chance to prove she's a liar, I won't just clear my name, I'll take her whole world down with me. It had been weeks of silence from my family, weeks of parking lot nights and empty mornings, when the first crack in Emily's story finally appeared. At first, I almost missed it. After all, when everyone around you treats you like a villain, you start to believe maybe the story will never change. But lies, no matter how carefully spun, always have loose threads. And Emily, for all her charm, had never been good at holding her stories together for long. It came through a cousin, of all people. Not one I was especially close with, just one of those extended family members you see at weddings and holidays, someone who always kept to the edges. He texted me out of the blue: "Hey. I'm not saying I believe you or don't, but something Emily said isn't adding up." Those words nearly made me drop my phone. I read them again and again, heart pounding. Finally, someone wasn't swallowing her act whole. I asked what he meant, trying to sound calm, though my hand shook as I typed. He explained that Emily had told one version of the story to our parents, another version to him, and yet another in a late-night drunken rant to one of his friends. Tiny details shifted. Times didn't match up. The where and the when kept moving like pieces on a board. For the first time since my life collapsed, hope flickered. Small, faint, but real. A lie that big can only survive if it's airtight. And Emily's ego, her need to embellish, to make herself the center of attention, was leaving cracks all over the surface. A few days later, I heard from an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to since college. They slid into my DMs with a hesitant, "Hey, I don't know what's going on with your sister, but she's been reaching out to people, and honestly, some of the things she's saying don't even make sense." They weren't defending me exactly, but their skepticism felt like oxygen. Someone else had noticed. Someone else saw the performance for what it was. And then came the real turning point. Emily herself slipped. She'd been riding her wave of sympathy so hard, drunk on attention, that she didn't notice she was overplaying her hand. In one of her Instagram stories, she mentioned a detail, something specific about when she supposedly confronted me, that directly contradicted what she'd told our parents. To most people, it would have gone unnoticed. But I remembered every conversation, every accusation, every cold phone call. And in that moment, I knew. She was unraveling. For weeks, I'd been powerless, watching my world burn. But that night, sitting in the front seat of my car with my phone glowing in the dark, I felt a new kind of fire. This wasn't just about defending myself anymore. This was about patience, about collecting every slip, every contradiction, every scrap of truth she couldn't control. She'd started her war with a lie. I would end it with evidence. The first spark of doubt wasn't enough to rebuild my life. Not yet. But it was enough to remind me that lies can't live forever. And for the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was watching, waiting, ready. The cracks in Emily's story were one thing. They gave me hope, sure, but hope alone wasn't enough to climb out of the hole she'd shoved me into. What I needed was motive. People don't destroy someone, especially their own sibling, for no reason. There had to be something behind it, something bigger than jealousy or drama. And when I finally stumbled on it, I realized Emily hadn't just lied to ruin me. She'd lied to protect herself. It started with money. It always does, doesn't it? I was at a gas station one night, counting crumpled bills to put $10 into my tank, when I overheard two women talking near the counter. They weren't strangers, they were acquaintances of Emily. I knew their voices instantly. They were gossiping, laughing, saying something about how Emily had finally gotten her hands on that cash and how nobody even questioned it. I froze. Cash? My sister? I didn't let them see me, I just listened, heart thudding in my chest. That night, I started digging. I didn't have much, no steady internet, just my phone and free Wi-Fi when I could find it. But desperation makes you resourceful. I started checking social media more obsessively than ever. Her posts weren't just about healing anymore, they were full of subtle flexes. Designer bags. A vacation with friends. Dinners at restaurants she could never normally afford. Where the hell was she getting the money? I reached out quietly to one of her old friends, someone she'd fallen out with a year earlier. I didn't expect a response, but to my surprise, she replied. Maybe she was still bitter, maybe she just wanted to vent, but either way, she spilled. Emily had been dipping into funds she wasn't supposed to touch. Not just borrowing from mom and dad, though she'd done plenty of that too, but straight up scamming people. Fake sob stories, GoFundMe campaigns for medical bills, even skimming money from a workplace where she'd been briefly employed before she quit under mysterious circumstances. Suddenly, things clicked. My sister hadn't just accused me for attention, she'd accused me to distract. To shift the spotlight off her long enough to cover her tracks. She knew if people were looking at me, no one would be looking at her. And it had worked. Perfectly. I felt sick. Not just because of what she'd done, but because I realized how easily she had played us all. The golden child image, the dramatic tears, the carefully timed stories, it was all theater. And I had been cast as the villain in her performance. But here's the thing about secrets, they rot in the dark. The more I uncovered, the more certain I became that hers wouldn't stay buried forever. The lies about me had been brutal, but they had also given me something I hadn't had before, an excuse to dig. No one else was watching her. No one else was paying attention. But I was. For the first time in months, I felt sharp again. Focused. The fog of shame started to burn off, replaced by something cold and steady. Emily thought she had silenced me. What she didn't realize was that she had handed me the perfect opportunity to study her, to learn every weak spot, every inconsistency, every skeleton she thought she'd buried. And when the moment came, I wouldn't just defend myself. I would drag her whole empire of lies into the light and watch it collapse. By the time I pieced together what Emily had been hiding, I was done playing defense. For months, I'd been in survival mode, fighting just to breathe while she strutted around in her victim costume. But once I realized she was sitting on a pile of lies bigger than the one she'd used to bury me, my mindset shifted. I wasn't just going to wait for her to slip anymore. I was going to push. I was going to build something so precise, so undeniable, that when I pulled the trigger, she wouldn't just stumble, she'd fall face first into the mess she made. The plan started small. I began collecting screenshots of her posts, old texts, Venmo transactions she hadn't thought to hide. Every time she contradicted herself online, I saved it. Every time I heard gossip about her struggles that didn't line up with reality, I wrote it down. I became obsessed with the details, keeping a mental ledger of every falsehood. At first, it was scattered, just scraps of information. But slowly, it started forming a pattern, a web that traced her manipulations back years. Next, I needed witnesses. That was tricky, because most people still believed her. They didn't want to hear from me. But bitterness runs deep, and I found that anyone she had wronged in the past, ex-friends, old co-workers, even a couple of burned exes, were more than willing to talk once I approached them carefully. The more I listened, the more the picture sharpened. Emily wasn't just reckless. She was calculated. She lied for money, for attention, for the thrill of being center stage. And she always left wreckage behind. Still, gathering dirt wasn't enough. If I just threw everything out there, it would look like I was retaliating, like I was just lashing out. I needed timing. I needed a stage as dramatic as the one she'd chosen when she accused me. She'd destroyed me publicly, family, friends, work, all at once. So my revenge had to be just as public, just as undeniable. If I was going to bring her down, it couldn't be in whispers. It had to be in a spotlight so bright that not even she could spin her way out of it. I fantasized about it in those long nights in my car. I'd imagine the look on her face when the mask slipped, when everyone who had praised her finally saw the rot underneath. I pictured the silence at a family dinner as her lies crumbled in real time. I even imagined the exact words I'd say, calm and measured, while she scrambled for excuses. Of course, it wasn't going to be that simple. Emily was slippery. She had a gift for spinning, for twisting any accusation back on the accuser. I couldn't just confront her. I had to corner her. I had to create a situation where her own words, her own actions, would betray her. That was the key, not me screaming my truth, but her choking on her lies. So I started baiting the trap. Quietly reaching out to the right people, nudging conversations in the right direction, planting seeds of doubt where I knew they would grow. Every time Emily told her story, she dug herself a little deeper, added a flourish that didn't quite match up. I encouraged it, subtly, knowing the bigger her performance got, the easier it would be to rip it apart. I didn't have a date circled on the calendar yet, but the plan was coming together. I would be patient. I would wait. And when the moment came, I wouldn't just clear my name, I would burn her golden child image to the ground. The sister who tried to bury me would learn what it felt like to choke on the smoke of her own fire. By the time the trap was ready, I'd been living like a ghost for months. Every day felt like training for a fight no one else knew was coming. I kept my head down, acted invisible, let Emily believe she'd won. That was important. She had to think I was beaten, that I'd disappeared into nothing. Because arrogance was her weakness, and arrogance would be the thing that finally cracked her open. The opportunity came in the form of a family gathering. My parents' anniversary. One of those events where everyone shows up, cousins, uncles, people who hadn't spoken in years but would never miss a chance to pose for a family photo. I knew Emily would be there, basking in her role as the strong survivor, soaking up sympathy like champagne. And I knew if I waited long enough, someone would ask her to retell the story, the same one she'd been performing for months. That was where I would strike. But I didn't just want to rely on chance. I prepared. I gathered every receipt, every inconsistency, every piece of evidence I'd collected, and organized it into a timeline so clean it looked like something out of a courtroom drama. Screenshots printed. Bank records exposed. Testimonies written down in black and white from people who finally had enough of her games. It wasn't a pile of accusations, it was a weapon. Still, I knew better than to walk in guns blazing. If I attacked first, I'd look desperate, bitter, vindictive. So I decided to let her set herself on fire. I reached out to a couple of cousins beforehand, the ones who'd already started doubting her, and casually dropped a few leading comments. Nothing heavy-handed. Just enough to make them curious. Did Emily ever tell you the exact date? Weird, she said something different when I asked. I left it at that, knowing curiosity would do the rest. The night of the gathering, I arrived early. People looked surprised to see me, like they hadn't expected I'd show my face. Some gave me cold nods, others avoided eye contact. I didn't care. I wasn't there to win back anyone's affection. I was there to set the stage. Emily walked in late, of course, glowing like a queen making her entrance. She hugged people, kissed cheeks, pretended not to see me standing in the corner. She looked untouchable, confident, adored, sure that she'd buried me under her lies for good. And for the first half of the evening, I let her enjoy it. I sat back, quiet, watching, waiting. Then it happened. Someone, my aunt, drunk on wine and sentiment, brought it up. "Emily, you're so strong," she said, patting her hand. "I don't know how you've managed to get through everything after what she glanced at me, did to you." The room went silent. All eyes turned to Emily, and right on cue, she launched into her performance. Tears welling up. Voice trembling at all the right moments. She started retelling the story, adding her usual flair, hitting all the beats that had made people believe her in the first place. But this time, she didn't realize I was ready. I pulled out my phone. Not to interrupt her, not yet. Just to quietly cue up the evidence. Screenshots of her posts, where she placed herself in 2 different cities on the same day she claimed the incident happened. Texts where she contradicted her own timeline. Bank records showing she'd been draining money through a fake fundraiser while she claimed she was too broken to work. All of it lined up perfectly, ready to be shown at the exact right moment. And as I listened, I couldn't help but smile. Because I knew something Emily didn't. The more she talked, the deeper she dug her own grave. The trap wasn't just set, it was about to snap shut. The moment was so sharp, I could almost hear it, like a glass about to crack. Emily was mid-performance, her voice quivering as she painted herself the eternal victim, when I felt the switch flip inside me. For months I had been silent, humiliated, invisible. Now it was time to reclaim the room. I let her finish the part about how hard it was to finally tell the truth. The family was eating out of her hand, nodding, dabbing tears, clucking like a choir. And then I spoke. Just one line. Calm, steady, almost casual. "That's strange, Emily. Because on the day you claimed that happened, you were actually in Chicago. Remember? You posted pictures. Want me to show everyone?" The room froze. Emily's eyes darted to me, sharp and wide, but before she could respond, I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. The photo glowed against the silence, her smiling in front of the bean, time-stamped, geotagged, undeniable. Gasps rippled through the room. She stammered, No, that was a different." I cut her off. "Really? Because here are the texts you sent the same night, saying you were still there. Funny how you managed to be in 2 places at once." Another screenshot. Another gasp. Her face flushed red. She started to talk faster, her charm slipping into panic. "You're twisting things, he's twisting things, he's always been manipulative." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Manipulative? You mean like creating a fake fundraiser for medical bills while you were out buying designer bags? Or draining money from your old job and calling it a mistake? I flipped through more receipts, each one like a blade. I've got bank records. Testimonies. People you thought would stay quiet. Should we go through them all tonight? Or should I just send the file to everyone here? The silence was suffocating. My mother looked pale. My father's jaw clenched. Cousins shifted uncomfortably. Emily's perfect mask was cracking right in front of them, splintering with every receipt I held up. She tried one last time, voice breaking. "You're lying. He's making this up, don't believe him." And that was when one of my cousins, the one who had texted me weeks earlier, spoke up. Quiet, but firm. "Actually, Emily. You told me something different. Your story never lined up." That was it. The room turned. Not all at once, but slowly, like people waking from a trance. Side eyes. Whispers. Doubt spreading like fire. And Emily, for once in her life, had no script to save her. I put my phone down and leaned back. "I've lost my job, my home, and my family's trust because of your lie. You wanted me ruined so no one would look at what you were doing. Well, guess what, Emily? Everyone's looking now." Her hands shook. Tears came, but they weren't the controlled, performative kind anymore. They were messy, desperate, real. And no one rushed to comfort her this time. No one called her brave. They just stared, realizing the person they believed had played them all for fools. For the first time since she lit the match that burned my life down, I felt the power shift. And it was glorious. The family gathering ended in chaos. Nobody wanted dessert, nobody lingered to chat. People scattered in uneasy silence, leaving Emily standing in the middle of the room like the final act of a play gone horribly wrong. My parents didn't even look at me as they ushered people out, their faces pale and stiff, but I saw the way their eyes flickered toward Emily, like for the first time, they weren't entirely sure what they believed anymore. That flicker was enough. The next few days were a blur of aftershocks. My phone lit up with messages, not from apologies, God forbid anyone admit they'd been wrong about me, but from cousins, friends, distant relatives who wanted clarification. What's going on with Emily? Is it true about the fundraiser? Do you really have proof? I didn't rant. I didn't unload the whole truth at once. I just sent a few carefully chosen receipts. Enough to plant doubt. Enough to let the evidence speak louder than I ever could. Word spread faster than I expected. People started digging on their own. That's the thing about liars, once the spell is broken, people rush to find all the lies they ignored before. Old friends of Emily's resurfaced with their own stories. An ex-coworker posted a thread about how she'd stolen credit for projects. One of her old boyfriends commented on her social media, calling her a fraud. It was like watching dominoes fall, one after another, all pointing back to her. Emily, of course, tried to fight back. She doubled down on her victim act online, posting teary videos about being attacked by toxic people and how hard it is to be a strong woman in a cruel world. But this time, it didn't land. The comments weren't supportive anymore. They were skeptical. People started asking questions she couldn't answer. Why were you in Chicago that day? What about the fundraiser money? Why did 3 people tell the same story about you? The likes disappeared. The sympathy dried up. And in its place came suspicion, ridicule, and silence. The final blow came when one of her scams got exposed publicly. Someone who had donated to her fake medical campaign put the pieces together and went nuclear on social media. Screenshots. Bank transfers. Proof that the money had gone to her personal account. It blew up bigger than I ever could have imagined. Overnight, Emily went from brave survivor to lying scammer in the eyes of everyone who had once adored her. She tried to disappear after that. Deleted posts. Closed accounts. Moved out of her apartment. I heard she even lost her job, not that she ever held one for long. The family stopped mentioning her name at gatherings, as if pretending she didn't exist would erase their own shame for enabling her. And me, for the first time in months, I could breathe. No one rushed to apologize. No one begged for my forgiveness. But I didn't need them to. Watching Emily's carefully built facade collapse around her was enough. The sister who had cost me everything was finally paying the price. And the best part? I didn't even have to destroy her. She did it all herself. All I did was hold up the mirror. The days after Emily's collapse felt strange, like walking through the ruins of a battlefield after the smoke clears. For so long, my life had been defined by defending myself against her lie, by the weight of shame and isolation. When that weight finally lifted, I didn't feel triumphant. Not at first. I felt hollow, like I'd forgotten how to live without carrying that burden on my back. People started trickling back into my life in cautious, awkward ways. Old friends who had ghosted me months earlier sent tentative messages. Hey, I know things got weird, but I always believed in you. Lies, of course, but I didn't bother calling them out. I'd learned something important: most people don't care about the truth, they just care about being on the winning side. They had picked Emily when she seemed untouchable. Now they were trying to pick me. I didn't need them anymore. My parents, though, that was different. My mom invited me to dinner one night, her voice soft, hesitant, like she wasn't sure I'd say yes. My dad couldn't even look me in the eye when I walked through the door. They didn't apologize, not outright, but their silence was an apology of its own. For once, they weren't fawning over Emily. For once, they were sitting in the discomfort of what they'd allowed her to do. It wasn't enough to erase the months of betrayal, but it was something. Rebuilding wasn't easy. I had to start from scratch, new job, new place, new routines. For a while, I kept sleeping in my car even after I could afford better, as if part of me didn't trust the ground under my feet yet. But slowly, the stability I had loved so much before crept back into my life. Work came. A small apartment came. I learned to enjoy quiet mornings again, to sip my coffee without bitterness, to breathe without the knot of anger in my chest. As for Emily, she became a ghost. Her name turned into a cautionary tale whispered among family. Remember what happened with her. Don't end up like Emily. She had burned through her friends, her jobs, her money, Until she had no stage left to stand on. I heard through the grapevine that she tried moving to another city, starting fresh, but the internet never forgets. Her scams, her lies, her fake fundraisers followed her like shadows. Every time she tried to rebuild, the truth was already waiting for her. There was a time I would have wanted more. I would have wanted her to suffer the way I had, to sleep in a car, to feel the gnawing hunger of shame and loss. But the longer I watched her unravel, the more I realized she didn't need my help. People like Emily always collapse. It just takes time. And me? I had already risen from the ashes she left me in. Looking back now, it almost feels like a story that happened to someone else. I went from a stable, ordinary life to sleeping in my car because of one lie. I lost friends, work, my family's trust, all of it ripped away in the span of weeks. And then, somehow, I clawed my way back, not by fighting louder, but by waiting for the truth to eat her alive. The cost was heavy. I don't think I'll ever look at people the same way again. I used to believe family meant unconditional trust. That siblings might fight, sure, but they'd never destroy each other. Emily cured me of that illusion. If your own sister can burn your life down just to protect herself, what chance do you have with strangers? That's the scar she left me with, not just the months of humiliation, but the lesson that trust is a fragile thing, easily shattered, rarely repaired. And yet, I can't deny there was satisfaction in the revenge. Watching her unravel, watching people turn on her the way they once turned on me, it was justice, poetic in its symmetry. She thought she'd buried me, but all she did was hand me the shovel to dig her grave. If you ask me whether it was worth it, whether revenge gave me peace, I'd give you the only honest answer: it gave me balance. It didn't erase the pain, but it evened the scales. And sometimes, that's enough. These days, I don't waste energy on her. I don't check her socials, don't ask about her when relatives whisper. She doesn't exist in my world anymore. And maybe that's the real victory. She cost me everything once. Now, she has nothing, and I've built a life she can't touch.